Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the Improvisational Storytelling Podcast. We appear, like we always do, once a week in your bedroom to tell you a story. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. So this year, one story a year. This week, we are back. Last week, we started the story called, what was it called again? Do you guys remember what we called it?
I'm not sure.
No, I didn't write it down. I don't remember.
That's because I never told anyone.
I'm sorry. I normally read your mind, but this last week, it just,
Yes, it's Music Makes Magic. Let's see. And last week we had prequel, government type, and magic system. And Seth, you're going to do a little recap to tell us about how those work together. And then we'll introduce ours and then go from there. Sound good?
Yeah. All right. So, kind of what we had set up last week. Levi hit prequel. Normally, I think that's a new one that we've added.
Yeah.
But the idea would be that it could be a prequel to one we've just done, or a prequel to a different one we've just done, sometime in the past. In this one, in the way that you kind of used it, kind of a non-traditional idea, wasn't necessarily a prequel to anything we've done, but you kind of laid out a story, quick rundown of kind of a prequel to what we're telling now, but it wasn't anything that we had done before. You just kind of laid out kind of a back history to what's happening now.
Right.
And I'll get to that in a second. Reed had government type, and he brought in kind of a consolidated power into one kind of central, like charismatic figure that kind of, like in a time of crisis, so that like, someone, was making the decisions to make it happen, to make it move, to kind of take care of the problem, as it came up.
Right.
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 And I had magic system, which was kind of like a song and music kind of being used to shape or reshape, reality and environment, through song and music by kind of projecting us kind of like a scene, idea, or truth behind something, with people like believing that it was true. I mean, it could be, but like to enforce kind of a truth of a different reality or circumstance behind something that would then kind of alter in or create in that reality. So that's kind of what we brought to the table. And what we have is, I think it was like kind of quote unquote present day. There seems to be kind of this kind of world turmoil. They're trying to figure it out. It's kind of a big disaster. It was something about like a hurricane crossing the equator.
The way he said it is that this mother of all storms sort of hurricane is actually forming on the equator.
Okay,
and
forming on the equator.
Like rules of nature that have been in place for time out of mind just don't apply anymore.
Yeah, there's like tons of crazy things like polar ice caps melting and the magnetic north shifting, and just tons of different conspiracy theory or disaster level anomalies happening.
Okay. Yeah, so we've got all this going on. You've got kind of power consolidated into kind of the central figure to kind of make things happen, dish out justice, move things along, kind of trusted by the public, in the time of great need. And, the scientist, he's trying to figure it out. All these things kind of seem to be counter to nature, kind of, things shifting, something's different. And like, he can't seem to figure out the answer. Like, I was going to say D-Day, but not D-Day, but, the imminent threat is, counting down, and there's something with, his daughter reading these books, and there was like a connection to an author that was like, oh yeah, the answer is there, right? It's right there if people would see it. Well, then he makes a connection. This author that seems to know something but be really cryptic is the author of the book that his daughter is reading, and so he checks it out, and what he finds in there is the magic system, where in the books it's kind of fantasy kind of stuff, but then eventually kind of make some connections. And, this idea of using kind of projected concepts through song and, music to
Right.
alter and kind of create the reality of the world around them. And then that is used to kind of stop the disaster, to some degree. And now this kind of starts moving us into the world we're in now. I don't know how long it has been since then, but then it's kind of set up that either that leader or, some subsequent leader has passed on. And so now the world is kind of, or this area of the world is looking to replace him, because without him kind of taking the reins, as it were, to keep some of this disaster in check because of his ability to kind of make things happen and use this magic system to kind of keep
an
the
area
peace
safe and yeah.
Then that's kind of what they're looking for. So you have kind of this rise of everybody kind of, you brought up a movie, Six String Samurai, which is probably pretty obscure. So if you have seen this and you're listening, send us a message and you'll win, like, I don't know, 10,000 points. They're for nothing, but you'll feel good about yourself. It's the idea in this story where, like, there was a disaster and America had fallen, but Las Vegas, or was it Lost Vegas, kind of kept its freedom, and they put Elvis up as the king, but now he's died, and you've got all these musicians now trying to, like, make it to Las Vegas to become the new king. So kind of that idea, right? So you've got kind of all these different figures kind of traveling across the land to kind of come to this area to kind of lay claim, as it would be, to the seat of power or that position. And that's kind of where we are at today.
Great. That's awesome. I think that's a really good explanation of it.
Yep.
And then we revealed what story elements we have, so it's not a big secret or anything, but let's just go through it. What did you guys have last? What story elements did you pull last week?
Reoccurring character.
I had villain sidekick.
And I have
Ka-tet
members. So yeah, does someone want to go first? Does anyone have any story building ideas for this?
I didn't know what I remember I ducked out early and you just texted me my story element. I picked a villain sidekick from like a year and a half ago.
Well, maybe he is the villain now, or maybe he is the hero now.
I don't know.
Should we? Let's tell us. Tell us, Reed. Tell us.
Tell me more. Tell me more. Like, does he have a car?
Okay, or not.
Well, the character, we'll fit him in, right?
Right.
Yeah, he was the villain sidekick in the last story. Doesn't mean he's going to be the villain sidekick this time necessarily.
Right. No, absolutely. So I will tell you about the Ka-tet members.
Cool.
The Ka-tet members are 3. So Ka-tet, the words Ka-tet comes from Stephen King's Dark Tower series. Ka being fate and tet being group, typically 3, but it could be more, could be less. So it's groups of people gathered together by fate. So what we have here is we have 3 triplets. We have not 3 triplets. We have 1 triplet, 1 set of triplets, 3 individuals. And each of them have some form or malady. One's blind, one can see but is colorblind, and one can't speak, is mute, right? That's when he can't speak. That's mute.
Yep.
But they all share this sort of, I don't remember what it's called, but in the Dark Tower series, it talks about a Ka-tet kind of share a psychic bond with each other.
A bond, Robert. A bond. No, never mind.
They share kind of a psychic bond with each other where they can kind of talk. It's not so much like say, "Oh, how are you doing, Reed?" It's not so much that. It's more so like when I explain things to someone who I'm in the Ka-tet with, they understand it at a deeper level, right?
Yeah.
And so these triplets were, they all were about 16, 17, 18. I'm going to say about 17, 18 when this great changeover happened. And they were going to, how do I say this? They were going to graduate from the foster care system, as in age out. They have no idea who their parents were. They have no idea any of that. But triplets was kind of difficult for people throughout their life, and blind, mute, it was, let's just say they were a difficult case, several times having been taken up by foster parents who would take two of them or one of them or even all three of them. And they found it difficult to fit in with anyone with anyone. Right. But they had developed long since in the rigors of the foster care system. They had learned to stick together. They had insisted on sticking together. None of them could claim to be the oldest. And they all went by the same name, which was Charlie. Which made it, because they only had, when they were given up for adoption, there was only one birth certificate and it just said Charlie on it. And so they've all kind of, anyways, when this great kind of flipping of events happened, right? When all the physics of the world went mad and the magic system came into being, they all developed very unique abilities around this. They were kind of like on the edge of aging out of the foster care system, right? So I'd say that by this time the story starts, they are out. They're young still. I don't know if we said how much it was going to be, like a year or 2 years or so. It can be however long we want, but they're out now, and they can do crazy things because they're a Ka-tet, because fate and destiny has put them together. There's some insane things they can do, and because of their bond from being a Ka-tet, and because they share the sort of psychic bond that happens with Ka-tet, but then also share the psychic bond that kind of happens with being triplets, being as close as twins. So the one who's blind can see through his brother's eyes, right? The one who is deaf or mute, he can't talk, but like he can like tap like his fingers on something. He can basically like recreate the waveform of speech by like playing an instrument or something like that.
You can really make a guitar sing.
Yeah, literally.
Down, 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 down.
And they all basically can work together. To create and craft incredible illusions. Right. So each of them can kind of project forward and all work together to make these kind of crazy things. And it's with them that like mystical magic or weird magic was first kind of, before it kind of follows a suit of things. It's like you add in your will and you combine this thing and you speak it, right? And if you have enough of your will connected to it, then it happens. It's kind of like a formula where they brought in kind of a weird, because part of it is made from someone who's blind and part of it is made from someone who can't speak. It inherently does not make sense. And because it's power kind of moved together over like a psychic bond, it's strange. And so they basically have just been kind of moving around, trying to stay alive, trying to stay out of people's way, already having sort of become very well acquainted with the idea of staying out of people's way. Now they have to do that while also trying to find food and trying to figure out what it is they have. And they have no concept of destiny because all of them sort of all feel very unwanted and very kind of listless, very kind of lost. And I was thinking that they all join a circus.
They don't survive in the wilderness by eating worms? Big worms, little worms, fat worms, juicy worms.
I don't get it.
Nobody likes you. Everybody hates you. Guess you should go eat worms. Great big juicy ones, little tiny crunchy ones. You never heard that?
No. Okay. Yes, I remember that now. But no. So my thought is that as the world has fallen apart and tons of things have stopped working, like certain parts of electricity, certain elements of electricity like batteries or generation have stopped working or have started working in different ways. A lot of our technology has kind of changed, combustion has changed a little bit. Firearms have changed a little bit. Maybe they've just gotten a lot weaker, like all the gunpowder now is like a tenth of the strength it used to be.
Okay, so I've got an idea for that part of it, right? So with all this changing, right, a lot of things have become barren and desolate and like just kind of, but also weird. So like something could be dry, right? But there could also just be a lot more swamps, a lot more stuff. Or just like because like basic things, like I was just thinking like well, everybody is realizing that they can rise to power with like singing about how great they are, if they get enough people to believe it.
Right.
Like the trees just stop converting, carbon dioxide to oxygen, right? And so there's maybe this one little like park where like there's this like little old man or something there, lady that like is like singing to the trees, and like the trees are growing and like the air is clear and fresh there, and they're like, maybe someone stumbles across it and it's like, oh wow, like we haven't seen like, traveling across the land, we haven't seen like a well-ordered like orchard or something for
right
whatever. It's like, well, you realize like with the breaking of the world or whatever it is, like things have stopped. We have to like make it happen, right?
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
And so like everyone has lost this idea where it's like, in a sense, science has stopped working. So like people actually have to like sing about the water evaporating to create clouds so that it'll rain somewhere. Otherwise, it just like sits there, right?
Right.
I don't know. It's just like that was a thought of world building.
I kind of like that.
That's a very interesting thing.
And maybe that
makes me kind of tired, to think you have to sing your oxygen into being. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing I was thinking about is our scientist from the previous story who was kind of the beginner who stopped the hurricane, right?
Yeah.
From making landfall or from forming or whatever. What if that is one of the things that he has basically been providing, right? He being a whatever, biologist, botanist, whatever, that's one of the things that he was basically sitting there doing constantly. So sometimes in magic systems, the first part of the magic system is the most powerful, and then there's a lull, and then someone rediscovers what they had in the beginning, right? And things are crazy.
Yeah.
Like I think of like Wheel of Time, where but by the time you're reading Wheel of Time, the magic system is much diminished from what it used to be. What if that is kind of, what if at like the moment of this change, our hero from this last story, this professor, didn't just speak the hurricane. He didn't just tell the hurricane and sing the hurricane to go away. He, in fact, like proclaimed the inability for that thing to happen. And so it stopped happening. And where he resided, he was firm in the truth of the reality of what he understood. And so like that's why it's a beacon of normalcy, because it like things being ordered the way they should emanates from him because he was the first, right? So we'll say for 30 miles from around where he is, everything works as it should, according to the old rules, right? And so him dying has kind of thrown in the most, the like only place where time works as it should, where clouds form reliably all the time and everything happens exactly as it should in an ordered way all the time. Other places, there's stuff like the garden, like you said, Seth, where things happen sometimes in some ways, but everywhere else, we're kind of living on the borrowed time. And I would say that after the change, it didn't happen immediately. The trees didn't immediately forget how to do what they were doing. But the idea being is that at some point in the past, some strong enough intellect told the trees what they should do at the beginning or sometime in the past, and they've been doing it reliably because they were told to until this change has now taken place, and now they're beginning to forget. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I had an idea on kind of part of that. So to I know like I don't know how many episodes back this was, but I had a huge dissertation about modern music and whatnot. And kind of as you were talking, and thinking about the magic system a little bit, I was thinking. So I think in the last episode we kind of said, that the leader that took power, like he was a magician, but it was kind of contained with like an idea of because I'm gonna bring in I'm gonna say what I have to say, and I'm also gonna bring in the villain's sidekick. Although depending what Reed has, we could move this guy to the villain depending how we want to play it. But I mean, think about like folk music or even like older music, not like, oh yeah, music from the 60s and 70s, right? But older than that, like folk songs, right? Like the songs that people would come up with, like it's like about the green grass of home, and the beauty in the world, and
Right.
I don't know,
Right.
like
Right.
Old
like
timey
just kind of
music.
old timey, where it's like they're singing about like things that are good, and it's like the beauty, and like, all this stuff, like the blooming trees of spring, and we've seen bits and pieces of this, right? Because humanity likes to think of like their home growing up, and the way that the trees would blow in the wind, and or kind of like storms, and they'd be bad, but like you'd struggle through them, and so it always kind of kept things like so, right? So that kind of being cast out into the world had always kept most things kind of stable, or kind of
Okay.
working inside of that,
Yeah.
right? But especially with the rise of the magic system being more realized that was like a real thing, it wasn't that it was never a thing, it was just more subtle. And as people realize that in like the song, like, and I'm thinking like modern music, right? It's empty, right? There's like, it's a lot of like hype over like a celebrity, it's over hype about just like menial things, about like I don't know, this is supposed to be family friendly, so I can't get too graphic about some of the stuff, but you know what I'm
Right.
talking about, right?
No, absolutely.
It's like, yeah, I made the song, I made the money, oh, I've got a nice car, right? And in any particular genre, right, you can just kind of see it kind of emptying out of that old kind of beauty, and becoming more and more hyping up an individual or a fabulous lifestyle idea, right? Which then becomes a reality. And as more and more people, which then, especially after realizing that, oh, I could just sing about how great I am, and if people like that well enough or whatever, then I become bigger and greater. So that kind of in what we have set up, and that's why most of the rest of the world kind of just like went kaput, is because they realized, oh, this gets me power, and so they hyper focused on that, and so now nothing is being sung about the cool rain in the meadows, and the sunshine that brings beauty
Country
and
roads
life.
take me home to the place I belong, West
Yeah.
Virginia. Yeah.
Stuff like that. And so that's why everything is just like stopped. It's not hearing the music. It's not hearing it's like, right? Like if you think back about like, I don't know, might be making a jump, right? But like with Adam and Eve, and they were to tend the garden, right? Like, well, how are they to tend the garden, or like whatever? It's like, well, what if like, just like in creation, God spoke and it was, right? Kind of like, could they just kind of sing to the tree? Kind of think of, because last time I mentioned like Lord of the Rings, and like the singing, and the the elves bringing the life to the trees and the Ents by kind of singing them in, and kind of growing them up, and they're kind of
Yeah, I always thought, Adam named the animals.
Yeah.
When you there's something, you place a name, you name someone, and you speak character into that creature in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so kind of like that being like the lore shift of, that's why the world started crumbling, is because everyone was already doing that. And then after this, when they realized, oh, we're using that particularly, like reimagining the power, which is great, but then most of the world going, well, I can take power with this. I can make myself great instead of tending around them. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so that's kind of what's going on with that, if that makes sense. The villain sidekick, and again, we can see where yours takes Reed. Being I had villain sidekick, I'll explain the villain sidekick, but he could really be the villain in kind of the way I'll describe him here. But he is, quite literally like the traveling minstrel for a certain character, right? Realizing that he can like almost like this idea that like he can bring you up, but he can bring you down, right? So kind of like holding a lot of the power behind some other character that might portray as the villain, but really
Right.
could be the sidekick.
Right.
Right, but it's really then you have his minstrel, right, who kind of goes about and sends people out and kind of follows them around, and it was always kind of like singing out his praise, but it's always kind of like, in general it could look like, he's so great, he is tall, he can never fall, and when he stretched out his arm, none could stand against him, or whatever, all this, whatever, but like really building that up, but also kind of holding the key of power for this guy that like, I've really got an idea, I just don't want to take the front and center for it.
Right. No, that's a great villain sidekick. That's good.
Like I can make you happen, right? I have the charisma to kind of like build you up, but I could also tear you down very quickly, right? So that's kind of the villain's sidekick, but maybe he really is the villain. So we'll see what you have to say. But Troy is his name. His name will be Troy, unless your guy's name was Troy for some weird reason.
No.
Okay, but yeah, that's the villain's sidekick is kind of his.
That's great. That fits with the story really well.
Yeah.
I was thinking that he would kind of like the way he would talk about them would always be like, listen to my song about this person. Listen as I recant the tale of this person's great exploits. I saw this person going, always putting himself. So therefore, never actually only letting the person ever have strength when he was the one who was with him, observing him do it. Like basically creating conditions around the person having strength and power.
Yeah.
Right.
That is so mean. Mm-hmm. I like this kind of idea of was it the second or the third Wheel of Time book? The second Wheel of Time book, is that the hunt for the horn?
I think so.
Yeah, I think the hunt for the horn. Or no, that was the I can't remember.
Come on, which one is it? I'm trying.
Yeah, it's got to be the Great Hunt. I think that's what it's called. They're not up on my shelf here where I can just look up at them anymore.
The first one is Eye of the World, and then they go and
Yeah, I think it's the hunt.
Yeah.
Now the list I'm looking at doesn't have the Great Hunt on it. What is going on? Am I going insane? Yes, the Great Hunt. Okay, great. But I really like the scene. They're all in, I don't remember what city they were in, but it was like a giant crowd of people, and they're all being sort of christened as hunters for the horn and like going out,
Yeah.
I like that kind of ethos around this. It's like the king is dead, but maybe there's some thing you have to bring. So a bunch of people have gathered together in a city or in a place and are basically being commissioned to kind of go out and do something in order, some great thing in order to be named the successor, right? So a trials, like the trials of Odysseus.
Yes.
Style thing, or a hunt, it's like you have to go and who can create the most complex thing, who can bring the greatest work of something, whatever it is, like and this is where the villain is, this is where the Ka-tet members are, and this is also, in my opinion, kind of something that maybe the leader, this musician, isn't actually dead, but like they do this to kind of get people to go out and use the ability, to sing his songs that he's written about keeping the world together, It's like a evangelism effort, you know what I mean? So like, all right, everyone, you're going to see if you're worthy of becoming the new king. Go out and sing the old king's words and like prop up the reality of who he was everywhere, and then in 10 years or so, they'll do another one and we'll kind of keep this kind of hype train going. You know what I mean?
Ride on the hype train.
Exactly. It's the Ozzy Osbourne. He's the one who, he's the king. What do you guys think about that? Because that would allow for like a quest. That would allow for a journey. That would allow for people that the villain to be introduced, the villain sidekick, or however to be introduced, general conflict. I was just thinking that there's a company somewhere and people don't know where it's at, right? But they produce records. They make records and audio cassettes and CDs. But records are the easiest machine, because the way that you get something like a record to work is you declare its working, you declare its function over an old record player, right? You talk about how this record player would work if this right here and this right here and this right here worked. And so the easiest way to get a record player to work is to get an old crank record player, because that's the easiest one where a person can understand the function of the whole thing and to say it,
Yeah.
It's much harder to explain how a CD player works.
Yes.
Because then you also have to get electricity, and then you have to explain how electricity works. And in most parts of the world, they don't have people just constantly, in like the city, in the big main city or the big main area, they have people constantly walking around declaring the function of electricity.
Yeah.
But in most places, even like if you and I, Reed, were traveling and we stopped, at an abandoned house, like it wouldn't be worth it for me to like go through all the effort to talk about how a generator works, right? In order to get the generator to function, and then talk about electricity in order to get the wires working, and then to talk about a CD player in order to get the CD player working.
Yeah.
It's like much easier just to
crank up the phonograph.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is kind of going a little bit past. That's okay. It's kind of going a little bit past what Seth had originally said it was, but
yeah.
But a place that makes records, right? And they have been able to make a record of a person speaking about some function, and then they've been able to play that record, and that function, it's like the person's authority in how they spoke about it has been preserved through the record, right? So now you can get, if you can get a record player going, you can get a couple of record players going, and pretty soon you've got electricity and, a working generator, and a bunch of other stuff, because you don't have to know how the things work, but you've got that on vinyl. What do you guys think about this crazy idea?
This is great.
I think it makes it a bit confusing. Just my opinion makes it a bit confusing.
How so? I mean, if we're going to say that all of physics and science no longer function, and all you have to do is talk about it or sing about it in order to kind of bring it back and remind it how it works, wouldn't that just kind of, just by the basis of logic, go to everything else? Most people just live without it because it I don't know. I think that's one of the reasons why they're doing this kind of rejuvenate the world project, is to get people to go out into the world and to speak all these truths to try and bring a bunch of the world back. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we don't have to, it doesn't have to be the whole record music thing. That's fine. I thought that was kind of an
there's a part
idea,
of that I don't know. Maybe my mind just wandered in all of this. It just, I don't know. And sorry, to get back on topic, Reed, because I know we've gone on a bit. Reed hasn't gotten the reoccurring character.
Yeah, I can bring him in, and what we have here is a system that it really, because of the external forces, the way things had always worked no longer worked, and then this government system of kind of a central authority, just it kind of sprang up because somebody's got to be in charge, and we're too busy trying to survive to bicker over the things we used to bicker about, and so this is how, in a way, it's been kind of utopian in a way, but this is only, justice, like I said, justice in society has wide value. So the assumption is that rule is benevolent, and the subjects have the right to petition those in authority for redress of grievances, but the sovereign, the person who's in control, just appoints magistrates to serve at his pleasure. I mean, it's still an authoritarian, it's benevolent dictatorship, basically. But it's been necessary just to keep order while everybody's trying to figure it all out. And I brought back a character who is just antithetical to that whole meme, kind of throws a monkey wrench. And his name is Lucius. And he was the villain's sidekick in the story from like a year and a half ago. City State Private Eye. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this guy is like the muscle, okay? And he's a hard guy. And this guy, he just tries to get an idea of the game and manage his little slice of it. And he prefers kind of an anarchy, survival of the fittest, warlords, gangs, bosses, because that's his bailiwick, so to speak. Anyway, Lucius is like, okay, he appears to be a man without emotions. He seems to be kind of laid back, almost disinterested. When challenged about not listening, he'll parrot back what you said word for word. I mean, this guy, he's focused, he's smart, he's extremely violent when it suits his purpose. And he's into like racketeering, vice, gambling, prostitution, bribery, extortion, protection rackets. I mean, he's like seeking to cash in on other people's troubles, so to speak. And he's like this seemingly kind of bored, disengaged person will suddenly explode your face with his enormous, gnarled, knuckled fist. He can just react with lightning quick ferocity, all with a cold heart, kind of passionless detachment. But this guy is like, nice little business you got here. It'd be a shame if Lucius should find himself annoyed with you. Here's a guy. He wouldn't like to be the villain. He would like to attach himself to somebody that provides the environment in which he can kind of ply his trade. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I kind of had an idea, and it could kind of flip around in with like the villain's sidekick. So he could be the villain, but with like the idea of music, my mind went to bad Leroy Brown, right?
Yeah.
Baddest man in the whole downtown. So instead of necessarily like in the idea of someone trying to prop themselves as a hero, right? What if it is just like has that same thing, but it's like the minstrel kind of comes along and is like singing about how nasty he is, but powerful, and you can't stand against him, right? Baddest man in the whole downtown, badder than old King Kong,
junkyard dog.
than a junkyard dog, right?
Yeah.
Singing not necessarily his praises, right? But what happens in that song? At the end of the song, someone puts big bad Leroy Brown in his place, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's what I'm thinking, is that, he could be the villain's sidekick / villain, or not really knowing like between the two, because you have, that minstrel is like singing his praises, but they're not like heroic. It's kind of putting like a fear of him, right? Talking about how...
Here's a strange idea, and you guys can tell me it's a bad one, which is fine. So since this is a reoccurring character, that means that he already has a time and a place.
Yeah.
And he needs to some way be attached to that time and the place, but also attached here.
Mm-hmm.
What if the bad guys, right? The evildoers,
right?
The ones who walk and live in the dark. What if they, how do I say this? What if they summoned him using groups of people speaking with intent about someone being here to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of use this power of intent to bring him from wherever he was in the previous story here. And then they found out that with this ability, he's not just here now. He doesn't actually possess this ability to do this thing himself. In fact, he's kind of here temporarily. He kind of needs to be like continually charged up.
Yeah.
So then they got this other guy to basically follow him around, kind of feeding the universe with the energy about him that's needed in order to keep him here. And so that's why this minstrel guy is always with him and always singing his praises.
Yeah.
Is because if he doesn't, in a day or so, he'll like come apart and like just like disappear.
Yeah. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of stretching the magic system to its just total limits, but it's kind of, it gives this thing where this minstrel has power over him, right? But also is kind of like, but I'm also protected by him, you know? So maybe he sings a little bit more about his his kindness and compassion a little bit, you know? And then when a town kind of pisses the minstrel off, he like sings about his vindictive nature. You know, he's kind of controlling him, but he's also controlled by him because everyone knows that the minstrel is with this guy. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like having a nuclear bomb attached to a dead man's switch attached to your heart. It's like, sure, if you die, everyone else is going to die, but then you'll also be dead.
Yeah.
You know? So he's kind of like, I have to keep up this thing and with this guy, but also I everyone knows who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we're going to go with the kind of am I going to say it, Great Commission? If we're going to go with this kind of great hunt or this kind of great send-off, you know,
Yeah.
Concept, what are we saying that they're being sent out to do, you know? Part of me was thinking, have you guys ever watched One Piece? Seth, have you ever watched One Piece?
Years ago, I watched the anime, some of it.
Yeah.
I can't remember how far I got, but
it's fine. If you watch the first episode, then you're good. Basically, there's this scene where the king of all pirates, I think it was, gets captured finally. And there's a giant crowd of people around to watch him get executed. And he is like not scared at all. And they're all like, oh, he's planning something. And he basically, before they execute him, and I don't even remember if they execute him or not. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is that right at the end, right when they're about to cut his head off or whatever, he says that I have a secret treasure out there. And there's like crowds of like tens of thousands of people watching. And he's like, I have a secret treasure out there. And any one of you who gets it will be the king of the pirates. Ooh. And he laughs as everyone runs out of the courtyard to their ships and they all become pirates. And the authorities are freaking out because they were trying to do like a show of force to make people scared. But what instead happened was, you know, they inspired 10, 100 times more people to become pirates by capturing the king of pirates. So that's kind of an interesting concept to me.
I flashed on Ready Player One. Where there was the great contest, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
See?
That was really good. But something kind of like that, where we have to go out and do this thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what do they have to do? That's what we have to determine. What
is
it?
Great quest.
What is it that they're being commissioned? You know.
What is your name? What is your quest? What is the airspeed of a swallow carrying? No, I'm sorry.
North African or European? I don't know that.
All right. Part of me thinks it's bring back something. You know, I'm trying to figure out exactly what it would be. Because is it a physical thing?
The key, you know, I have this, you know, some kind of artifact that is going to, you know, turn, you know, make the whole thing work again or something.
Yeah, some amplification. Yeah. Is there a prophecy that spoke about this happening? You know, the author. Remember the author of the books?
Yes.
Maybe it's something to do with that. Maybe it's some lost tome.
Yes.
That has to do with, because I imagine those have kind of turned into scripture now.
Yeah.
What do you think, Seth? You got any ideas?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, maybe they have to go find the author, you know, because maybe with all this, he's going off of this one book, but like you go to the table of contents and this author has disappeared, right? And they seem to have known what was going on. But, you know, because I was thinking, like, not to be, like, ridiculous, but my mind did keep wandering to, like, the Holy Grail thing.
Yeah, that's understandable.
So, you know, that is, I mean, it's a quest. It's the, you know, they have to, you know, because you can read in, like, the book that kind of gives some of, like, the outline and some of the stuff. It's, like, book 2, right? Or maybe it's book 1, but there's, like, 7 other books, right? Or 8 other books, saga. right, of all this stuff. And a lot of this is like some basic information, right? It's like kind of retelling what's going on, right? A breaking of a world, like heroes emerging, using song and speaking, creation into this thing. And so it gives like a brief idea, right? And so people can kind of grasp at like what it is, but then you kind of get the idea that like the other tomes, like the other books, right?
Yeah, it's called the Words of Power series.
Yeah,
right.
It would
And
indicate how to kind of step forward, not just kind of in the moment, like, and the hurricane won't hit us, it'll dissipate, and, out at sea.
Right.
Oh boy, his fists are strong, he's super tall, like, he'll knock a man's head off, what, not like in this instant thing, it gets an idea, but how do you set up the structure to like start getting like the world to function properly again?
Right. Exactly.
And so maybe they have to go out and find these tomes. Maybe it was something where like she was an author and she wrote other works, but this particular work was like a handwritten work where there was only like she hand wrote them all and maybe had only given the one to the daughter, but then disappeared. Right. So they have to go out and like read the tome of the book, and maybe they all have copies because it's like, the story foretells that like, the wise woman in the stories, lives, on top of a mountain, past the great ravine, so like in the story, the heroes are looking and finding.
Right.
And, so
and everyone figures like everyone has their own take on what the story means, and how to interpret it. And sometimes the simplest answer is it, and sometimes it's the complicated answer,
Yeah. So perhaps that's the quest is they're seeking out, it's like they're trying to retake the steps of the story through like different interpretations to see if they can find the author and get the other tomes that apparently are out there to try and like progress with where this needs to go to set the world right.
Right. My thought is that the main city that is kind of the capital now is Charleston, North Carolina.
You mean South Carolina? Yes. Okay.
No, I mean Charleston, North Carolina.
Okay.
Now
there might be a Charleston.
Now it's just Charleston, Carolina. There's no more North and South.
Okay.
No, but yes, Charleston, right? And what we know about this author is that she lived in New York. She grew up in Minnesota, right? And then people who have the right information and have done the right research knows that she has 2 children, one who lives in Seattle and another one who lives in Texas, right? So everyone knows that she grew up in New York. She lives in New York, okay? Lived, who knows? New York's kind of a spotty mess right now. Mm-hmm. So most people are going to try and go to either New York or Minnesota in order to find her, But also some people have heard rumors about, obviously rumors are a dime a dozen. I can find someone right now who like can get you all 7 copies of the Words of Power for, only $25,
And you get it and you realize it's some weird Twilight fan fiction.
Exactly. Or it leads you off on a wild goose chase to where all their buddies are waiting with weapons, or whatever. In the same way, you can see it when you read the Wheel of Time and you ever run into a hunter for the horn. All of them are so convinced that the horn is, in Kyrian. All of them are totally convinced that it's, somewhere in Tarvalon.
Yep.
Everyone is absolutely certain that they know which inn it's currently being stored at in Ilion.
Yes.
And so like these levels of misinformation are abundant, but people are pretty sure, New York is where she lived, and Minnesota is where she grew up. And so it's like, these are the 2 places that people are going to start to kind of look around at, as the gavel drops, whatever, the revolver fires, as there's like this great ceremony sending people off to A, find the rest of these, but more important is B, which is speak to the power of the this king and the preservation of the world. How does that sound for an episode so far?
It sounds fun.
I think it makes sense.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better. If you want to Let us know about your cool ideas. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or message us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We'd love to hear from you. We think you have cool ideas too. I am going to draw our final elements. Oh, I say final. I want this story to go on for longer. Anyways, I'm going to draw our final elements. 1, 2, 3, 4,
It goes
5, 6,
on
7.
and on, my friend. Some
Seth,
people
number 1 through 5?
started telling it 5.
Excuse me, 1 through 9.
Oh, 5.
All right, I have unique weapon. Come on. Read number 1 through 8.
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, Seth, you have wild card. Have you had that recently?
I actually had Magic System to begin the last one and Magic System to begin this one. And
That's fun.
I think I wrapped the other one up with Wild Card as well.
Do you want a different one?
No, that's fine. I'm fine with Wild Card because then I can kind of pick whatever.
Cool. Reed, you have unique vehicle. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you guys next week. Bye.